next session covers demand supply balance and opportunities. For this, I invite Mr. Kanthesh Shetty, a senior consultant at Questro Research and Strategy. With close to 6 years of experience across the metals and mineral sector, over this period he has led and managed more than 40 research and advisory engagements spanning steel, copper, aluminium, and ferrous scrap and allied markets. At Questro, Kanthesh has been instrumental in developing several flagship industry reports, working closely with clients on sourcing strategies, pricing frameworks, cost analysis, and go-to-market planning across India and Southeast Asia. What sets his perspective apart is ability to translate complex markets into clear, actionable insights, enabling data-driven decision-making for both senior leadership teams and new market entrants. He will open today's discussion by setting the big picture context for copper landscape and framing the key forces that will shape our conversation ahead. Over to you, Mr. Shetty.
Yeah. Thanks, ma'am, for the brief introduction of mine. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. As part of the Industrial Metal Review 2025 and H1 2026 Outlook, my focus today is on copper, specifically on demand supply balance and the opportunity emerging from it. I hope my screen is visible, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So the copper today is no longer just an industrial input. It is becoming a strategic metal for electrification, energy transition, and the digital infrastructures. And in over the next 8 to 10 minutes, I'll keep it very short. I'll share why copper demand is structurally strong in India, why supply remains constrained, and what this imbalance means for manufacturers, users, and the policymakers. Yeah. To start with, copper is at a global inflection point. Demand is being, as rightly Chandrasekhar sir said, demand is being reshaped by electrifications, energy transition, and digital infrastructures. These are all structural forces, not a short-term cycles, basically. So as a result, copper demand growth is becoming persistent and multidirectional. And when we look at the supply side, copper is fundamentally rigid. New mining projects takes decades. Capital intensity is very high, and regulatory complexity slows capacity expansions or the capacity additions. So this growing mismatch between structurally rising demand and slow moving supply is what defines the current phase of the copper market. So let's now bring this global context to India. So in India, copper demand growth is broad-based and resilient actually. So demand recovery is not limited to a single sector. It is supported by infrastructure, power, mobility, and industry growth simultaneously. Even during periods of macro volatility, that is, if we see the COVID era and all, and if you see the last 5 years, the growth momentum has stood at CAGR of 15%. And the main important fact to see in this slide is India's per capita consumption of copper, we stand it at zero point 0.6 kg per person, whereas compared to a global average of 3.2 kg per person. So this gap indicates that India is still in a structural demand catch-up phase, making demand growth durable through the medium term. So what exactly is driving this demand growth in India? So this slide highlights the key drivers behind India's rising copper demand. First is green construction. As India adopts energy efficient buildings, sustainable infrastructure, copper intensity increases copper intensity increases in electrical wiring, HVAC systems, and power management. Second is EV adoptions. So when we see EV adoption, the intensity of copper is drastically increasing, like 3 to 4 times more copper intensity when compared to the ICE vehicles. And third is energy efficient appliances. As we've seen in recent days, like most of the customers are willing to purchase the five-star labeling products, and this is increasing the copper intensity in the consumer durable product as well. So importantly, demand growth is shifting from being volume driven to copper intensity driven demand, making it structurally stronger. Now let's compare this demand growth with India's supplies position. So as we have already seen this in the previous session, so we know that despite strong demand, India's supply position remained constrained. India today is a net importer across the entire copper value chain, raw material, finished goods, and recycled copper as well. We are the net importer as of now. And at the finished goods, import continues for wire rods and some of the precision products like copper foils for PCBs, heat exchangers, and precision tube for HVAC systems. These are all we are importing as of now. So this clearly shows that India's copper demand is rising much faster than the domestic supply capability. So let us see how this structural gap between demand and supply and where the real opportunity emerge actually. So as we've seen, the demand of copper, this persistent demand supply gap creates a long-term opportunities. As supply remains constrained, value is shifting towards imports, processing, recycling, and reliable delivery models. Opportunities are emerging in securing the long-term cathode and scrap sourcing, expanding value-added products such as wire rods and precision components, and strengthening the secondary copper ecosystems. So ultimately, what we need to see here is supply chain reliability, quality consistency, and procurement strategy are becoming competitive advantages in this phase of the market. And if we see the market of the copper is expected to increase to 2.8 million tons from the 1.9 million tons. And yeah, let us see the. I would like to close with the Questro's perspective on what demand supply imbalance really means for India's copper ecosystems. The first and most important point is here is India's copper challenge is not demand visibility, it is supply readiness. Demand is structurally assured across the construction, mobility, and digital infrastructures. In this environment, copper needs to be treated as a strategic industrial material other than the raw material. Volatility and supply tightness can directly disrupt manufacturing, infrastructure executions, and energy transition plans. So, from a manufacturer point of view, the priority shift towards securing the long-term cathodes and scrap sourcing, moving up the value chain into wire rods and precision products, and investing in recycling. These are the very important factors or the strategic actions to be considered by the manufacturers. Whereas when it comes to the user side, that is basically the OEMs, infra, and auto, procurement strategy will become as important as product strategy. So I mean to say here is the users, whenever they purchase the material, they need to treat as procurement as a strategy, not like how we treat as a product strategy. It's not like a normal raw material what we are purchasing, but we need to treat it as a procurement strategy, moving away from spot buying towards strategic sourcing and supplier diversification. And at a policy level, enabling secondary copper, recycling ecosystems, and value added manufacturing will be critical, reducing structural import dependence. The key takeaway is simple. The next decade winners in copper will not be those who add capacity fastest, but those who manage supply risk best. So, that in an essence, this is how the Questros views the future of copper in India. Yeah, thank you. And this was very short brief. And this is about the Questro's perspective on how the demand supply balance imbalance and what could be the opportunities for the three main users, that is the manufacturers, users, and the policymakers.